Hello YouTube, welcome to another Season 6 Patch 5.24 guide, and in this guide we are bringing you the mid laner, Talon. A long time ago, Talon was a very underrated champion. Voyaboy randomly brought him into an LCS game and had a ton of success with him. After that, Talon's play rate skyrocketed and he was seen more often in LCS. It became apparent that his 1 second silence combined with all of his damage was way too strong. After that, Riot decided to remove his silence and instead gave him a 99% slow for 0.25 seconds to help get off his damage. He still has all the damage he had then, and now with the new Masteries, he's really strong again and is probably pretty underrated in my opinion. In this guide we're going to cover his pros and cons, his Masteries, runes, summoners, his ability leveling order, his item build, and some closing information as well. We're going to hop right into his pros and cons, starting with his first pro, which he has very high snowball potential. If you give Talon an item advantage, he'll be able to repeatedly blow up any enemy whenever his ult comes off cooldown. If this happens, he becomes a huge threat around the map if he ends up roaming. We of course get things that have movement speed increases like Ghost Blade and Boots of Mobility, so we are able to do this if it does happen. His next pro is that he has strong roaming. As you level your Rake, it actually ends up being a pretty decent slow, which gives him some CC that he can bring into his ganks. This, combined with the massive damage you do bring, makes him deadly against the right enemies. If you gank lanes where your allied champion actually has a lot of CC as well, if you catch your enemy off guard, this pretty much means sure kills. Talon's third pro is that he's great at catching out individual enemies. He has two different ways he can do this. He can approach unsuspecting enemies with stealth with his ultimate, or he can just get to them very fast with his Ghost Blade and Boots of Mobility. When a teamfight's about to start, Talon is one of the best champions in the game at finding a flanker to delete. Obviously, if he can do this, the game is now a 4v5, and the teamfight is going to be a hell of a lot easier. Talon's last pro is that he's a great duelist and assassin. Although he has great burst damage, which makes him an amazing assassin, he also has some good sustained damage, which makes him a good duelist as well. His Noxian Diplomacy allows him to do a bleed, which does damage over time, as well as revealing his targets. Now, although Talon has a lot of pros, he also has some cons. His first one being he's weak before he actually has some items. Talon has high ratios, but he has low base damage. This means before you get your build going, he's going to be weak against most mid lane champions. He'll be able to get bullied rather easily. Now, as long as you get through the early levels against your opposing laner and you eventually get some items, you should be fine. But if you do fall behind, you may have a tough time catching up without any jungle help. Talon's next con is that he doesn't always have a reliable escape. He can use his Cutthroat to go in on an enemy, but unlike Katarina's skill, he cannot use it to escape. Your ultimate can be used as an escape, however it's also very important to use in a damaging combo. Even if you do use this, you can be found by pink wards, oracle lenses, or heroes with some stealth reveal, such as Lee Sin. His last con is that it's rather hard to live through team fights. Assuming you're able to get to the AD carry, and that they are able to find you afterwards, usually you will end up killing the AD carry and then they will all snowball onto you and then kill you. Unless you have your flash up or something to escape, usually you're going to die. If this does end up happening over and over, I mean, it is kind of fine because you are getting rid of the squishiest target that does the most damage, but obviously you would like to try to live through the fights if possible. This also means it's rather hard to carry team fights unless you are able to get off a lot of AoE damage. And Talon is definitely far from perfect. He's definitely not considered a god tier champion, but his strengths definitely outweigh his weaknesses. And he's also a very fun champion to play. We're now going to look at Talon's Masteries, which are 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning. In Ferocity, we start by taking 2% increased ability damage, followed by Double-Edged Sword, which is 3% additional damage, and take 1.5% additional damage as well. We then move into Vampirism for 2% lifesteal and spell vamp, and finally we get Oppressor, which is deal 2.5% increased damage to targets with impaired movement. This is a great mastery on Talon considering his enemy opponent is usually slowed with his Rake. The other masteries in this tree help with some more damage and give some lifesteal as well for some lane sustain. We then move into Cunning, grabbing Savagery first, which is 5 bonus damage to minions and monsters, so your last hitting is much easier. We then get Assassin, which is a new mastery, and it's great on Talon. You deal 1.5% increased damage when no allied champions are nearby. You then get Merciless, so you deal 5% increased damage to champions below 40% health, so you're able to finish them off easier. We move into Dangerous Game, which gives champion kills and assists restore 5% of your missing health and mana. This may give you the health needed to survive through a team fight. We then get Precision, which is gain 5 plus 0.5 per level armor pen, and 3 plus 0.3 per level magic pen. This obviously makes you do more damage to tankier champions which actually have armor. And finally, we get the most overpowered mastery in patch 5.24, which is Thunderlord's Decree. Your third attack or spell on an enemy champion calls down a lightning strike, dealing magic damage in the area. This is a very good mastery on an assassin as it adds just an extra bunch of damage when you do 3 attacks in a row. Now we're going to jump right into Talon's runes, which start with 9 greater marks of armor penetration, so we're able to get through any early armor as well as help us deal with armored targets. We then get a combination of 9 greater glyphs of scaling magic resist and 9 greater seals of scaling health, so we're as tanky as possible in the mid lane as we level up. Talon can actually get pretty bullied on in mid lane, so these 2 runes in combination help deal with that a little bit. We finish this off by getting 3 greater quintessences of attack damage to help with blast hitting and blowing up targets. For Talon's summoners, we get Flash and Ignite. Flash is used for chasing, escaping, and repositioning. It can be helpful for getting to the backline as well, or to escape after deleting a target. We take Ignite because it can help secure kills that would have otherwise walked away with slivers of health. Since it is simply extra damage, it will enhance your dueling and kill potential. And on top of this, it's also a counter to champions who abuse healing. With all that covered, we're going to look at each of his abilities, starting with his passive, which is called Mercy. Talon's basic attacks deal 10% increased damage to enemies that are slowed, stunned, rooted, or suppressed. Now this is an alright passive. You can abuse your rake, so you slow them and then when you catch up, you get an enhanced auto attack. Now that your Cutthroat also adds a new slow, this also works with that as well. If you actually have your Ghost Blade activated and another attack speed item, you can actually get 2 auto attacks within the 0.25 second slow. Now this passive's not amazing, however if you use it properly, you can actually do a bunch of added damage. We're going to move on to his Q, which is called Noxian Diplomacy. Talon's next basic attack within the next 6 seconds deals bonus physical damage. If the target is an enemy champion, they also take additional physical damage each second for 6 seconds and are revealed for the duration. The bonus physical damage is between 30 and 150 plus 30% AD, and the champion damage per second is between 1.7 and 8.3 plus 16.7% bonus AD. The cost goes from 40 to 60 mana at max rank, and the cooldown goes from 8 to 4 at max rank. The additional damage they take is between 10 and 50 plus 100% bonus AD. This is actually one of the most important spells in Talon's kit. It doesn't have as high base damage as rank, but the additional damage that they take for the duration of the skill is huge. We max this second as the base damage doesn't increase much per level, and it is a melee spell. Next is Talon's W, which is called Rake. Talon sends out a volley of daggers that return to him at the end of their trajectory, dealing physical damage to any enemies they pass through and slowing them for 2 seconds. It is worth noting that each enemy can only be damaged once per pass. That means if they got hit and then flashed and the daggers kind of flew through them again, they do not take damage twice. The physical damage per hit is between 30 and 130 plus 60% bonus AD, and the slow is between 20 and 40%. The range is 600, the cost goes from 60 to 80 mana, and the cooldown is always 10 seconds without CDR. This is your most important spell early on, as it's good for harassing the enemy as well as taking CS that you don't want to go in and get punished for. You max this skill first because its base damage increases by 50 damage per level, and it is your main wave clearing tool. It also acts as your ranged harass in lane. Talon's last basic ability is Cutthroat, which is his E. Talon blinks to the far side of the target enemy, slowing them by 99% for 0.25 seconds and increasing the damage he deals to them within the next 3 seconds. The damage amplification is between 3 and 15%, and the range is 700, the cost is between 35 and 55 mana, and the cooldown goes from 18 to 10 seconds at max rank. This skill is the primary way of closing the gap between you and your enemy. As I said before, this is a one-way tool. You are able to get in on an opponent, but you are not able to escape. Early game, this is really just a gap closer. However, late game, when you get 15% damage amplification, it can actually do a lot of damage. Talon's last ability, which of course is his ultimate, is called Shadow Assault. Talon throws out a ring of blades, dealing physical damage to all enemies they pass through, and enters stealth for up to 2.5 seconds, gaining 40% movement speed for the duration. When Talon emerges from stealth, the blades converge to his location, dealing the same physical damage to all enemies they pass through. The physical damage per hit is between 120 and 220 plus 75% bonus AD. The range is 500, the cost goes from 80 to 100 mana, and the cooldown goes from 75 to 55 at max rank. It's worth noting that the blades retract instantly if you perform an action such as cast another spell or auto attack. If you burst properly by using either your W or your teammate's active to cancel the stealth as soon as it starts, the blades will immediately burst out and retract to do both chunks of damage instantaneously. You should also note that this does actually have a decent range, so you can use it to execute enemies who are out of your auto attack range as well. It's also a pretty huge source of AoE, so you can use it in teamfights against squishy grouped enemies to ignore its defensive capabilities and just drop a load of damage against your enemies. With each of those abilities covered, we're going to look at the ability leveling order. And first is Shadow Assault, which is your ultimate. You take it whenever you can, meaning 6, 11, and 16. You follow this up with Wraith, which is your W. You take it at level 1, and it is your main basic leveling priority. So you take it at 1, 4, 5, 7, and 9. You then move into Noxian Diplomacy, which is your Q. You take it at level 3, and it is second in leveling priority, so you take it at 3, 8, 10, 12, and 13. Finally is Cutthroat, which is your E. You take it at level 2, and it is last in leveling priority, so you take it at 2, 14, 15, 17, and 18. With the abilities fully covered, we now look at his items, which starts with the Corrupting Potion. This is a great item to have a lot of sustain in the mid lane if you are getting bullied. One alternative to this, if you felt like you did not need the Corrupting Potion, would be a Longsword and 3 health potions. The first item we get is a Ghost Blade. It's great for speed boost and everything else it provides. It's great first item on Assassin, and it even adds 10% cooldown reduction on top of it. Now if you're looking for better wave clear, you can get the Tiamat before the Ghost Blade, but do not finish off a full Ravenous Hydra before you get the Ghost Blade. The second full item we get is our Boots of Mobility, so we're able to roam around the map and snowball hard. We then turn our Tiamat into a Ravenous Hydra because it's great sustain and it's great added burst for an assassin as well. We then move to a Death Dance for 10% cooldown reduction and added damage with a bleed on it as well. Next we get a Black Cleaver because it's got 20% cooldown reduction and makes us hit the cap. It's also good damage with some added armor penetration as well. Finally, we get a Maw. It's great against comps with some AP champions. It's got added damage and magic resist with a shield as well. Now, of course, if there's no AP champions, which is a very rare thing, then you would not get a Maw. Some alternatives would be an LDR if you're against high armor teams, a Bloodthirster, or a Mercurial Scimitar if you're against high CC comps. That pretty much covers it for the mid Talon guide. I hope you guys found it helpful and enjoyed it. If you guys liked it, please like and subscribe, and I will have many more guides in the near future. We are also currently working on a website, so we have all of our guides in one place and much easier to find, so look out for that. I will be posting that, of course, when we do have it up. If you guys have any comments or suggestions, please also leave those, and I'll make sure to respond to you guys in a prompt time. Thanks again for watching, and I hope I see you guys in the next guide. Take care.